All right, welcome everybody. Thirsty Thursday number 37. Welcome back and thanks for joining us. Tonight we are joined by Mike and Anne Gagliano from Seattle. Mike had a long career in Seattle Fire Department, and he's joined tonight by his wife Anne, which we're really excited about here. Everything that they've done. If you guys haven't, or if you don't know, they wrote a book on the firefighter marriage, which is fantastic. We're going to show. I think we'll probably end up talking about that a little bit tonight, and I'll show you. I'm going to throw it up on the screen where you can get it. So make sure you get a book and read what they have to say. So I'm gonna cut my part short. We're gonna kick it around the horn, and then we're gonna come back with some current events like we did 2 weeks ago, and then we're gonna get into the show. It's gonna be a great show tonight. Bobby's gonna be jumping on. He had an overtime shift today. So speak of the devil, here he is. Bobby.
Hello.
Wow, he's it's like Beetlejuice. You say his name 3 times and he just appears.
Welcome, Bobby. We're literally just getting started, so we'll kick it over to Trevor and then go around the horn.
All right, great. Thanks, Ben. Again, Mike and Anne, we really appreciate you all coming on. I've had the privilege to meet Mike a few years ago in person, probably many times passing at FDIC, but Bobby, when we were out at the Alaska Fire Conference, we all had a chance to sit down for a little bit. And besides the work that Mike and Ann have done on the firefighter spouse relationships, the fire department marriage, so to speak, and all that really important work they've done, Mike, even going back to when you're doing a lot of the stuff with air management back in the day, and quite a bit of that I referred to when I was teaching some classes out at FDIC. Say, hey, you got to check out these Seattle guys. You got to look at some of the stuff that Mike Gagliano is doing, and it's really you're not that one hit wonder that's done something and that was it. So I think you've really diversified in the fire service, and we're so happy to have you on. And for those who are just kind of joining us, a lot of stuff going on in the fire service and public safety here as of late. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes before we kick off the show, and certainly pay tribute to those folks. And as Ben had said, this is Thirsty Thursday number 37, and we've been blessed to have a lot of great guests on here. And for those who are newer to the program, the reason we call it Thirsty Thursday is that we want you to drink up some training, drink up some knowledge, take some nuggets home with you. So whether you're drinking iced tea or Long Island iced tea, we really don't care. It's just join us with your favorite beverage of choice and drink up some of the stuff that we have to present tonight. So with that, Bobby, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Oh, well, good evening, everybody. Ocean City is in a unique situation where we're low on staffing. There's not a problem in the rest of the country right now, so I got held over. So I kind of had to run home quick after work. I know everyone else is struggling with the same things. First of all, I guess first and foremost, I want to say that we had a tragedy here in the Mid-Atlantic area. Trevor had talked about already, and so I have set aside 3 glasses. I'm sure they're looking down on us. Ooh. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm sure they're looking down on us, and so we're going to have three beers here for the 3 Baltimore City firefighters that we lost last week. They put them to rest in our area. The first time in 225 years, the Baltimore City Fire Department closed down, and all of our regional fire departments all stepped up. And went over and staffed all of their fire hydrants, all of their ambulances, all of their battalion chiefs, every part of it. And that's just a tribute to the fire service in general, that when someone's hurting, everyone's going to come and do all we can to make that a better deal. So I know that like our local fire departments, Salisbury saw some work over there while they were there. I think Delmar saw some work over there locally. Baltimore's a pretty busy place, so it's kind of crazy that they did that, but it was also they could honor those 3 that passed away. Our co-host, Mike, unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight. He is working tonight over in Baltimore City, and he's had a very, very tough week. So with all of that being said, I just want to raise a toast to Baltimore City, to family and friends of the fallen. And for everyone else in that city that has to pick up the pieces and kind of keep moving on. So with that being said, I really am excited to hear Mike and Ann tonight. I've heard so many things about you, and all good. And so it's really great. We couldn't get Aaron Fields, so we had to settle for something else. No, it's fantastic to have you guys. I can't wait to hear the conversation tonight. So thanks everybody for being here.
And Bobby, if you don't mind real quick, obviously being a Marylander and an Eastern Shore boy myself, the Baltimore City thing is very near and dear to me. And also want to take just a minute to recognize the fire captain out there in Stockton, California as well. Just goes to show that even a routine, basic, what we consider a nothing call, can turn out to be very tragic. So to our brothers and sisters, who passed, not only this week, but throughout the years and years, certainly your thoughts and prayers. All right, Benny, start us off.
All right, Mike and Ann, would you guys like to do a little intro and give us a little bit of your backstory and what got you to this point today?
You want to start?
Well, I guess you want like Mike's resume or just how we got here doing the marriage class?
Yeah, I think more just about like what brought the book about, maybe a little bit about your careers, what you did. Mike, if you want to talk a little bit about your career in Seattle.
And the crash and burn story that led you to having to do this podcast tonight. So there had to be some tragic circumstance that brought you here.
Well, I guess I can just kind of start. I'll just tell you a little bit about us and our story. We met in 1984. That's how old we are. Met in the 80s, met in college. I walked into our college dorm, and Mike was the RA in the dorm, running the dorm, student advisor, and he offered to help me move my stuff into my dorm room. And I said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. And I found out later I was the only one that he did that for. I thought he did it for everybody, did it for me. And we've been pretty much
worked out.
Yeah, we've been pretty much together since the day we met in August of 84. We were a year later, we really wanted to get married, but we didn't have money. We hadn't finished school. We were 20-year-old kids. I mean, we were really young. And so in order to finish college and get married, Mike signed up for the Air Force, went into U.S. Air Force. They asked us where we wanted to be stationed, and we're from Seattle area. Mike's from Idaho. I'm from Seattle. And we said anywhere west of the Rocky Mountains would be great. They stationed us in Louisiana. That's the military. And they asked him what he wanted to do as his profession. And he said computers, because he was studying. Computers were a brand new thing back in the 80s. And they put him in the fire department. So that's how we ended up in the fire department. That's the military. Loved it. Absolutely. And we absolutely loved Louisiana too. That was a great place for us to start. And from there, loved the fire department. Didn't really like the military that much. It wasn't quite a good fit for Mike. He wanted a little more freedom. That's a pretty restrictive environment. Loved the military, but it was not the best fit. So we got out of the military, and Mike tested for Seattle fire, because that's, again, where I'm from. And it took a long time. And the process, as you know, takes a long time. So in that interim, he became a corrections officer for a really bad area in Tacoma. Tacoma was kind of used to be our really crime-filled area. So he was a corrections officer for a year. So he was in the police world for about a year before he got on with the fire department. So that's a little bit of military, police, fire, and then got on with Seattle Fire, raised our boys, and when they were done going off to college, he decided to become a captain, and he promoted to captain in Seattle Fire. And when he became a captain, he became the training captain at the training center. And at the training center, he was now on a day shift and there every day and running into firefighters that he hadn't seen since the beginning. And every day he was hearing from them that their marriages were falling apart and that they were divorced, or, guys he hadn't seen for a long time. Now he's seeing them. And so, after about 2 months of this heartbreak and hearing divorce after divorce after divorce all across the department, he just came home to me one day and asked me a very simple question. And he said, boy, our marriages are really struggling. Is there something tough about living with a firefighter? And I said, yeah. And by this time, we'd been married 24 years. He said, well, can you write some of this down so maybe next time somebody asks me for advice, I'll know what to say. And so he was expecting a teeny little post-it note with an idea or two. And instead I handed him this typed 10-page annotated document of things I've observed over 24 years of marriage at that point, and handed it to him. I said, well, here you go. This is my perspective as a spouse, what I've seen, and I really, really thought hard about it and really looked over our history, areas that we fought, areas that we struggled, areas and tips of how we dealt with it, because nobody told us a thing when we got into these professions. Nobody tells you anything. You're just expected to adapt and figure it out. And so this is how we got here, was just kind of my perspective after all these years, and from his simple question on, are we kind of tough to live with? Are firefighters tough to live with? So that's how we got here. And sometimes the spouse can tell the firefighter a little bit better, because sometimes you don't see your own issues. Sometimes it helps, because he didn't really know what to say to the other firefighter. So that's how we got here. That's what led to this. And he gave it to Bobby Halton at Fire Engineering. My answer to his question, submitted that, and they published it. And then that led to a column, which I wrote for 10 years. And the columns led to the book, and the book kind of helped us develop a class along the way. So that's how we got here. That simple question. Fantastic. Are we hard to live with? Yes, sometimes. Yeah.
Some of us might be harder to live with than others, obviously, Yeah,
well, that's fantastic.
Mike and Anne, let me ask you this. How do you get to take that 30,000-foot view of yourself? Because agreeably, if you're too close to an issue yourself, you don't have that perspective, and you don't see all the ramifications of it and all the ripples on the pond with it. And just to clue everybody in a little bit, prior to coming on the show, we were having a brief discussion about, that crystal ball that is not issued to the spouses, but like in my case, if I come home from one of our infamous shifts in Ocean City, and I needed to get back into being either husband or dad, not the uptight captain, BC, whatever's going on, and I need to take that time to hit the reset button, or as my wife would call it, going to my island. But if I didn't take the time to say, hey, I just need a little reset time, I need to go to my island for a few minutes, an hour, or whatever, just so that I'm not that jackass coming to my family. But instead of relaying that or articulating that, I assumed it was a given. And then, until my wife came and said, hey, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot over, what's the problem here? And then we had a great conversation, and we're able to go where, I can say, hey, I need to go to my island for a few minutes. So how do you engage? I mean, obviously, Mike asked a very simple question and probably got more than what he bargained for in a response, which is great. But how do you start that conversation? But also from the spouse's end, how do you start that to say, hey, here's the 30,000-foot view of you?
Well, boy, let me enter. It's a lot there to unpack, but let me enter into it this way. The reason why I hope the book is resonating and why the classes are resonating is because firefighters, when they read it or they see us, or hopefully when you listen to us, you're not going to see somebody on a pedestal, or a whatever, an icon or this great example of this, that, or the other. And my hope is that what you're going to see is just two folks like yourself we're normal, everyday folks. I love being in the fire service. It's just been such a privilege to have this as my calling, and such a privilege to be hanging out with, firefighters like yourself. And you're all a bit odd ducks, and you're my kind of odd ducks, and everywhere I go, we were talking about having all the regions covered here with Maryland and Florida and Southern California. And, it's wonderful just to go to different places, and the accents are different. The weather's different. Some of the some of the configuration of the way guys do stuff is different, but the guys are, pretty much the same wherever you go, and it's wonderful. Trying to make that love for this calling that we have intersect and work well with the other cool thing in my world, which is my home life, my place of safety and security, and the place that I love and the person that I love more than anybody in the world, trying to make that work. And you actually kind of answered it in short there, Trevor, with you kept using the word conversation. Anne did a dump load of work in writing her columns and researching and reading other people's materials and trying to figure out a way to condense down the things that we saw that were working for us, why they were working, and how to put it into words that everybody could understand. And I'll tell you what kept coming back was there's no particular words that work other than you've got to commit to having a conversation in your language, in your way, with your variables, your family variables. You aren't us. We're wired a particular way. We have a belief system that is a particular way. Our personalities and temperaments, our situation is, it's not all unique to us, but the elements are unique to us, and yours are too. But in the middle of having these conversations about the things that are common to us, the struggles, the challenges, and most importantly, what Anne identified was the unique things about the fire service that now try to intersect back into the home life, and how to have legitimate conversations about those in a way that you can get on each other's side. And you can start, understanding each other and figuring out, oh, you're not just being, a jerk, or you're not just being micromanaging, or you're not being insensitive. Here's what's going on. Let me get on your side and let's make it happen. And so that's what she did. I mean, it took a while, but she, in the book, there's a lot of things in the book and there's a lot of things in the class, but she narrowed it down to 5 key conversations that as a couple you have to have, and hopefully have them when you're not mad at each other, and not on the other end of a really bad event or whatever. Have these 5 key conversations. And if you do that, it helps you to get past a good many of the things that we found in our relationship were trouble spots, and that we're finding in most firefighter marital relationships end up being the place where breakdown happens. And so I hope that's at least a start to the answer, of how we got here and those types of things. The conversations, and I'm sure we'll talk about what a few of those are, whatever you want to do. You do want to have them when you're chilled out. Don't have them when you're angry. Don't have them in the middle of a fist fight. I think you want to have them when you're not, in a place where you're constantly being interrupted. Put your phone away, get the kids off to a sitter, or while they're at school, or kick them to grandma's house or whatever. And you've got to come from a perspective, and this is going to be hard because this is not where our culture is right now. You've got to come from a perspective of selflessness, not selfishness, not what am I getting? What about me? I want my thing. Give me my thing. And I know that's our culture right now. And unfortunately, our fire service culture is kind of going through this whole thing. If you approach it from a what's it all about for me, and what do I get out of it, and why isn't my spouse doing this for me, et cetera, it's going to be really difficult to get on each other's side. Our perspective is we're trying very hard to serve each other, to take care of each other, to get on each other's side, and to help each other with the things that are not working. And if both of you are doing that, it makes the conversations, the 5 that we're going to recommend, or whatever ones you're having, I think they have a much better chance of being productive.
And Mike, to that end, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I really appreciate the fact that it's like sitting across the coffee table from somebody, and we're just having a conversation. Yeah. So the way you all have gone about this is you're not pontificating. There is no silver bullet solution to anything. But I really think that, Anne, from your perspective, you've gotten into a firefighter's head, good, bad, or indifferent, because you were able to prioritize. We understand a priority list when we get on the scene of something, and we get on a high-rise fire. Here's the top 5 things we need to do. They might not be in that particular order, but if I can say, hey, I've got 1, 2, and 3 done, and can you take care of 4 and 5? So, and I know Ben, Bobby, you're a marriage veteran. You've been married for quite a long time. You probably get less time if you killed somebody. But anyway, Ben, you're relatively new at it, so we're all coming at this from a different perspective. But what are some of those? What are some of those 5 key elements that for regardless of where you are, personalities, like you said, different ideologies, belief systems? What are those 5 common things that we can take a look at?
Well, I narrowed it. I thought of all these things. When you're asked a question, there's all this history and elements that swim around, and I just kept narrowing it down and all these little instances and memories, and they kept falling into those 5 categories. And that was what was cool about it. All these thoughts, narrowing down, separating them, putting them in this column, putting them in that column. What I started with, though, was what about this profession that is different than other professions? And actually, the first question I asked, is the divorce rate higher? Because it seems like it is. No hard scientific data on that, but again and again and again, the statistics tended to lean towards military as number 1, fire and police tied for 2 and 3, and medical number 4. Those 4 kept rising to the top, consistent. And interestingly, we've been all 4: military, fire, police, and Mike's EMS. So medical is in there. And so then I started looking about those 4. What do they experience that maybe the rest of society does not? And the things that kept right. And again, this was back when nobody was talking about what you guys go through. The things that kept rising to the top were danger and trauma. And those words were not mentioned to us ever in our history, just danger, trauma. And then add to that, for the firefighter, sleep deprivation because of the 24-hour shift. Those 3 things have huge impact on your person, physically, emotionally, and then sleep deprivation, which is something we struggled with and still struggle with. His inability to sleep adds to kind of this funk or this grouchiness or this tough to live with at times. At the firehouse, alive and alert and at your best and on adrenaline. At home, we're seeing the other side of that, and how, as a spouse, do we deal with that? How do we have patience with that? So looked at those 3 differences, which are huge: danger, trauma, sleep deprivation. And again, all these thoughts, how do I narrow it down? Came up with the 5, and they were the 5 conversations. And so the first one, and you mentioned it, and this, I call it reentry time. And that was that transition from this intense rock and roll world of the fire service, now segueing back home. And I noticed that as a young fire wife way back in 1990, which is when Mike started. We had 2 little boys, and I remember many, many times things going wrong at reentry time. Him coming in the door, and literally we would pounce on him, me and the little boys. We haven't seen you for a long, long time, and we want to talk and we want to bond, and the kids want to play with you, and this broke while you were gone. And then him being like almost irritated by that and wanting to get away from me. It's like, you just got home and then you're wanting to get away from me. And that used to really offend me and hurt my feelings. And if a spouse doesn't understand what the firefighter has just been through in 24 hours, how can I help but take it personally? Like you said, the crystal ball, I can't read your mind. I can't understand because I wasn't there. So that's why I try to get the spouse a little bit on the firefighter side. With they've been through danger, they've been through trauma, they've been up all night. They don't want to just sit down and have a heart-to-heart major conversation with you the minute they walk in the door. Don't take it personally, because I did. I took it personally. We fought. What I learned to do, trial and error, was give him that reentry time. Like you said, go to your island, go decompress, give him a chance to shift gears, because it's an entirely different mindset than most civilians can ever understand, that what you have to go through to do what you do. You have to alter physically. You have to shut down emotionally. You're up all night again. All these transitions are huge. And if you're not given a chance to have that time to decompress, you are going to clash with your spouse and your kids. And so that's the first conversation. I call it reentry time. figure out what works for you. For Mike, it was just leave him alone for an hour or so. Don't expect, I used to call it the assault, when I would just pepper him with questions, the assault, talk to me, and
Fix this,
do this. And like I said, it went bad for us, and it would set a bad tone for the whole day. Oftentimes it would take 2 to 3 days to recover from that bad encounter, and then he's off to work again. And so the cycle would just continue, perpetuate. And somewhere in there, I just figured out he was better if I left him alone. And then later in the day, then he would be in a better place, a better mind frame to sit and actually talk to me, because he did want to see me. He was happy to be home, even though it seemed like he wasn't. Give him that break, understand that he's dealing with intense stuff. So that's the first conversation. It's reentry time, all kinds of ways to do it. Like you said, go to your island, take a nap, just sit and quietly read, take a hot bath, whatever it takes to help you shift gears. That's really, really helpful to set a good tone for the rest of your time off, help you reconnect. Saved us a lot of fights when I figured out to do that for him.
Well, and you see the reason it's a conversation and not a rule, or a checklist, or do what Mike and Anne did, is your guys' lives are set up different than ours, right? Some spouses work, some spouses, work at home and take care of the kids. There's 1,000 different configurations and variables to people's lives. That's why it's a conversation for you and the person that you love most to say, so here's the problem. The problem is rock and roll, high intensity, see a ton of terrible crap, much more terse environment, and now segue to home. That's the problem. How do we, as a couple that wants now to get along and to navigate it well, for us and the way we're configured, how do we make this work so we're not constantly crashing at the door? And some days you just got to suck it up, right? It's the way it is. You get home and it's right into this broke and that broke and whatever. But if you're doing that all the time and you're continually crashing into each other, bad stuff is going to get said. Feelings are going to get hurt. Time's going to get wasted. So many problems could be avoided if you just navigate this thing called, as she described, as reentry time.
Yeah, I know when in my previous job, working at the high school, I would come home at the end of the night, 6:30, 7 o'clock on the early nights. And when Rachel, my wife, was on FMLA time from just having the baby, she'd be home with this infant all day, and she thrives on interaction with other people. Like, she has to have that interaction. And her being at home all day with an infant, while it's great, she doesn't have that interaction with everybody else. So I come walking through the door. I'm angry that I was at work all day, and now the baby's like angry because she kept her awake so I could see her. And she's like, "Here, do you want to hold her?" I was like, "No, it's an angry baby. Who wants to hold an angry baby?" Like, I held her. Yep, it's cute. Here, can we put her to bed now? But it got to the point where I was like, "No, just put her to bed. I'll go in. I'll kiss her goodnight. Like, I'm good." And once she got back to school, the baby went to daycare, and we had that time where, like, she had interaction with other people, like, she had more of her needs met, and it was much easier when I got home, to have that reentry time and that time back together. But it was rough. I would come home and she would just be 90 miles an hour. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it.
And so here's an important thing, and it's I appreciate the honesty, and the example. When you get ready to approach the conversation, this is really important, and it's going to work against many of your natures. It really is. Don't feel bad about it. It works against our natures too. What you described is exactly the types of challenges that it's like, I need this, and I need this. Well, I need this. Well, I need this. Well, you got to understand, I've got the. Well, you got to understand, when you get into that smash and grab, nothing gets done, and that's why I want to really emphasize. You start the conversation with a heart towards, I'm looking out for the person on the other side of this conversation, and I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I take care of their needs. If both of you are doing that, you have a real chance of success. If both of you are coming to the conversation that's now going to become an argument with, hey, screw you, hero. I know you're out there trying to save lives, but spend all day with these damn kids, spend all day teaching school or work in the emergency room or trying to sell cars or whatever the jobs are that are stressful as well. Live in my shoes for a little bit, which is it's a true observation. It's a legitimate observation. But when you come at it from, here's my corner and you should take care of me because, you should take care of me because, you have a much more challenging time of getting together. We were successful in large part because both of us at our heart were looking out for each other, and we were willing to put our own stuff aside. And in the intersection of that, we met each other's needs. And we don't do it perfectly all the time. Believe me, we had plenty of dust ups and screw ups and learning along the way. And I think both of us if we talked about it at length, we're both ashamed of how much time we lost, how much time we wasted being pissed off at each other and not really knowing why. But, Trevor, as you mentioned, nobody told you about this stuff. Nobody said anything about this or prepared you for it. So.
Yeah, but Mike, and you said, both you and Ann said something really important I'm going to get to in a second. And I want to get Bobby to chime in here because I'll kind of embarrass Bobby and put him on the spot. Besides just, being all around, great firefighter, paramedic, instructor, everything else. One of Bobby's greatest talents is that if you see something as black, I see it as white. He sees that shade of gray that none of us considered, and we had that aha moment. And that's, again, I want to get him to chime in. But when you had talked about, when you come home, you're getting peppered, oh, this is broken, you need to fix that. Part of it, I think, too, is a little bit of our personality where we're decision makers. We want to address the incident. We want to mitigate it, and we want to put the report in the box. And that's how we approach some things. Like, so if your spouse just maybe they don't want you to fix crap for them, they can fix it themselves. They just want you to listen to them for a second. They just want to be able to vent. They want to be able to talk. They want to be able to put their stuff out there and go, that feels better. But instead, we're like, hold on, okay, what's the problem? All right, do this. We're going to do this. Now we can't figure out what the hell we're going to have for dinner because it's like when we get home, we don't want to make any more decisions because we just made a decision on this, and life and death, and the 9 blind children and their disabled mother that we saved from searing heat and blinding smoke. All that stuff that we do or we think we do. But at the end of the day, sometimes they just don't want us to fix anything for them. They just want us to sit there, shut up, and listen for a minute. And they need to decompress too, because we're just so focused on with our horse blinders on to say, man, long 24-hour shift. And like I used to tell my guys, and I tell some of them now, even though I'm not on shift work anymore, Bobby, is that, when I was on a 24/72, the guys at work, they had me for 24 hours and they had 72 hours off from me. My wife had 72 hours on, 24 hours off. There's a big difference in those two things. So, but I think that was a really important thing that you said is that we have that fix it mentality, and either that decompression time where we don't want to, we frustrate our spouse by saying, I don't care what we have for dinner. And we have a 2-hour argument about what to have to eat, or we just completely dismiss their thoughts, their concerns, their stress, anything going on, because we're just like, okay, stop, and we're just applying that instant management philosophy to our relationships. And most people in the relationship with you don't want to be managed, I don't think. I mean, I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, but I think after 20 some years of marriage now, I figured that one out too. So Bobby, can you kind of chime in here a little bit too, because I know, again, you see those things, and I want Mike and Ann to get in on what you have to say, because you always have that thing that none of us considered. So here's your time, brother.
Not in relationships. I don't have, I can only speak from my own experience, and my experience was, I too went in the military. I was in the Navy, and when I was on the ship, they put me on the fire crew, and for those of you guys that aren't in the military, they don't ask you. Yeah. So it's funny, when I left the Navy, I was actually the number 1 nozzleman, which I didn't think any of it. Now I look back, that's like one of the most important jobs on a whole fire team on the ship. I never knew it because they just said, this is what you do. That's it. And I kind of went from there. So that was my exposure at the beginning of the fire service. So when Kathy and I got together, I just got started a couple years out of the Navy, about 3 years out of the Navy, I guess. And I wanted to continue firefighting. So my town of Millville, Delaware, they had a volunteer fire department. I joined up, and right at 88 and 91, I started doing it as a career. So that was the first big strain on our relationship. Was I had never worked shift work, and she had never been with anybody that worked shift work. And that was really, honestly, we probably would have broke up if we didn't have kids. And so at that point, the kids were really just a fabric kind of holding us together. And then later on, through trial and error, I guess you could call it, we did start having, conversations. The second thing with my situation was, my wife was a prosecutor, a lawyer, and she just retired a couple of years ago after 32 years of that. Law particularly bores me, and she doesn't like to hear about blood and guts. So we didn't have lots of conversations about my work because she didn't want to hear it, and I was kind of bored with law. Yeah, so we had to kind of say, hey, and the biggest one was you remember the Shores fire, Trevor, where we had a.
Sorry, guys.
It's got the skin.
Want to get rid of that?
Mom always calls.
Count on my mom to call.
I got you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So I had a particular fire. It was fairly sketchy. It was a very, very close call for 5 of us, and it had to do with a firefighter rescue and an apartment fire. And my wife had always said to me, she said, "Hey, I don't want to hear about work like that." So I said, "Okay." So we're out all night long, and I get home and I don't say anything. Well, she actually works with one of her coworkers was married to the other guy that was involved in this fire with me. And she started telling her all about this. And Kathy came home and said, "You son of a bitch, why didn't you tell me about that?" I said, "Because you told me not to tell you about that stuff." So in my situation, people aren't always saying what they mean, and she wanted to know what was going on at work. She wanted to know what was happening with me, and time and age helped us a lot because I learned, love can create a relationship, but negotiations is the only way it's going to stay together. I've heard lots of people that are divorced and say, "I still love them," or "I love her," but they didn't have the negotiating skills. So I'm not an expert at it. I don't have any gray areas for you, Trevor. I'm sorry. I am going through life figuring it out on my own. But it's been, I wouldn't trade anything for the world. We've been married for about 33 years now, going on 33 years. And I started the fire service at the same time. So any younger guys on here, don't do both at the same time. It'd be quite the strain. So I literally got married and got in the fire service all at kind of the same time. And that was a very unusual way to do it. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. I'd do either get married for a few years or do the fire service for a few years or something. But that was the most difficult time in our relationship. But now it's good. We really can talk about things a whole lot better. But things still build up for us. We still have stuff boiling over where it's boiling over when you got 3 or 4 things you're mad about. That means you're not talking about anything. And then when you give them, they give you 6 things back. You say, "Oh, we haven't been talking for a while." So it's great hearing you guys. I really, I've not read this book, but I'm going to read it because it'll probably help me survive my next 35 years, right?
Well, Bobby, give yourself a little bit more credit.
Here's a really cool thing that happened in the midst of what you guys just talked about. It happened when we were in the pre-show time and we were just chatting. We weren't on air. And Trevor, you brought up the idea of reentry time and, having that gap. And then right before you started talking, Bobby, Trevor was talking about the fix it kind of nature that we have, the fix it mentality. Mm-hmm. And then Bobby, as you started talking about how do you navigate the tough runs? How do you figure out what's okay to talk about, et cetera? All 3 of those things are 3 of the 5 conversations. Yeah. And you see now here's the encouragement I have for all of your folks that are listening. You're not alone. It's part of the challenges that the job bring to home life. Don't feel weird. Don't feel frustrated. Don't feel hopeless. We're all dealing with this stuff. And so now that you're not alone, now it should be okay to start to move forward to. It's like, okay, if this is kind of the same stuff that's happening to everybody, how do we navigate it to where we can love the job, love being a firefighter, fulfill our calling, but not lose our home, and not only not lose it, but have a kick-ass home. Have a home that's awesome and a relationship that's really close and tight. I was just smiling that we didn't even tell you what the 5 main conversations are. You hit 3 of them without even having to be asked. That's because it's universal for the most part to people that are doing our job and trying to have a good relationship.
No, you actually hit conversation number 4 when you said, I don't want to be a drill instructor with my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
That's one of them. I call it harshness,
yeah.
and bringing home that firefighter speak,
yeah.
and starting to dictate to your spouse and your kids, because you're still in firefighter mode. So that's actually the 4th one.
Yeah.
You brought that up too.
Well,
see how
it's going to be a game now to figure out. We can figure out what number 5 is. So I'm sure we're going to hit it here soon.
Probably. I'll let you guess.
Well, talk real quick about fix-it mentality. Here's the challenge we have. We've never struggled with fix-it mentality, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, right. That was part of the assault, like you said, where it's just they're just wanting to talk, and then you shift into hold it, let's make a list, let's fix it. And I found that a lot with Mike, that I'm just wanting to vent and to share my emotions and my feelings. And it's almost, you almost can't say this anymore without being labeled as sexist, but it's true. We women do like to talk about our emotions typically more than men do. That's just been our experience. And in talking about my emotions with my best friend, there's healing in that for me. And that's something that he doesn't quite understand. As a man, talking about emotions typically is not only not healing for you, but actually irritating and don't understand it. And so what you'll tend to try to do, what is comfortable for you, especially for firefighter men, is to switch into fix-it mode, because that is what's comfortable for you. That is how you feel like you're helping your spouse. And that used to really irritate me. It's like, no, I don't need you to fix this. I want you to listen to me. I need you. I need your advice as a friend, not as a firefighter. And typically, I call it whipping out the dry erase board with the 5-point plan. This is what's wrong, and this is what you need to do, and let's address this. And you were wrong to do it that way. And next thing you know, I've gone from seeking comfort to now I'm offended. It's like, what, you think I'm an idiot that I don't know these things? Or and all of those things work in the firehouse. They work in a professional setting. They don't work in interpersonal relationships. They just don't. And probably the reason for that is, again, it can come across as insulting or condescending, as this is my boss, I'm the subordinate. Just doesn't work, even though it's well intended. And the other aspect of that too, how we often get to the explosion point, especially as a young spouse, I noticed again what he's dealing with, and his problems are life and death. They're thrilling, they're exciting. My problems started to feel almost ridiculous by comparison. And so I would withhold them, waiting for a time that was perfect, that was peaceful, that was mellow to approach him. And in the world of firefighting, there is never a perfect time. It never slows down. You guys are always having intense situations. So we're dealing with 2 problems: me waiting till I'm ready to explode, and him replying with the fix-it mentality. And so here we are, my holding back and his not responding correctly. So that's the problem that we had to address. I learned to bring my problems to him immediately as needed. No reason to wait, because there's never going to be a perfect time. There just never is. So, and don't, especially for the young spouses, never feel like your problems are ridiculous. He never saw it that way. It was just my own mistaken belief that compared to what you're dealing with, mine don't matter. Not true. And he would tell me that again and again and again. Your problems matter to me. Bring them to me. Don't hold back. And then number 2, don't go into fix-it mode. Just sit down, listen, be my friend. That's what I need. You don't have to understand it. Just do it. just listen. It helps.
Now, Ann, what are your thoughts, and you and Mike both, what are your thoughts on place? You talked about time, which, that everything you said, I think, is phenomenal. But one of the things, and Mike, you hit on this a little earlier, that when you come home, that's your domicile, that's your bubble, and that's where you should feel the safest. You can let your vulnerabilities hang out, and you're getting past when you got to fix this, got to fix that. But then when I would feel that I could say, okay, well, here's how I'm feeling about this, and this. I'm still a little bit in that firehouse mode where I use the F-bomb like a comma, and I've got my 5-year-old kid who doesn't need that vocabulary expander. And then I might get my, my knickers in a twist, because if my wife says, not right now, and I'm thinking, you want me to talk here? I'm doing my Chris Raffle imitation. Sorry, guys, you guys do.
Awesome.
But then, I'm not conceptualizing, yes, there's the time, which is extremely important, and getting it out when it's important to you. But now there's the place. And if I'm putting it out there, and then you feel like you're getting a mixed message, because perception is reality. And all my spouse might be trying to say is, look, it's bad enough our son was raised by a pack of wild firemen, but we really don't need to expand on this too much. Maybe we ought to have this conversation in a different time, in a different place. It doesn't mean that she doesn't want to hear what I have to say. She's saving me from having to explain to a teacher why my son is fixated on 4-letter words. So what are your thoughts about trying to time and place everything? And again, you said there's never that perfect time. There's never that ideal moment. But what if the place isn't right? How do you? What are your thoughts on addressing that?
Well, I do. In most of what we're talking about, you have to be purposeful. You have to be volitional. You got to be. If you're just doing it in a haphazard manner and hope it works out, you're going to get haphazard results, and you're going to get the results that work out. That's why the conversations, I think, are purposeful. It's like we're purposefully going to have these chats, and that is part of one of them. I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times. You want to have the conversation when you can. You can't script everything, I mean, sometimes you got to chat about things right now, but the more important stuff, and especially when you start talking about things like you've hurt me, you've hurt my feelings, or, I had a really difficult run. Man, you heard what you just said to your son or to your daughter, or did you hear what you just, when you're having, really important to try to schedule it in a time when it's good and it's appropriate, and you actually can listen to each other, and you're not interrupted, constantly being interrupted, and the phone is put away, and the telephone shut off, and all this stuff. You got to be purposeful about it. The fifth conversation is first family first. It kind of encapsulates all the other ones and kind of rolls them all together. And a key part of first family first is you've got to be purposeful in planning and making sure there is time for your family, and time for your relationship, and time to hang out together, and to have meals together, and to grow together, and to spend time together. And if you don't, you're going to have a transitory relationship. You're going to be ships that are passing in the night. You're going to cohabitate, and you're going to share finances, at least for a little while. You're going to share finances, and then you're going to divide them up. That's usually the path that goes. But in first family first, Anne talked, I think, really well about love your calling, love the fire service, enjoy that, but never let it come to the point where that becomes more important than, number one, the person that you're going to grow old with, hopefully. Number two, the other relationships that you have, your children, your parents, your other family members, your friends, and your neighbors. That is a compelling part of life, and it's a healthy part of life. And if one side is taking too much away, it's an unhealthy situation to be in. And I would, it's not just professionally and family. One of the mistakes that we made, I think some folks will resonate with this. There was a period in our married life and in our professional life where I got way out of balance, and it wasn't family and it wasn't fire department. It was out of balance in relation to doing things for church, in the church world. And I mean, very compelling stuff, right? What could be more compelling than, the service to a God I believe in as much as I'm talking to you guys. I believe that. But I got to the point where I was so committed to the people and the things I was doing in the church world that, number one, my family was getting slighted. And number two, interestingly enough, I don't feel like I was given full bang for the buck to the fire department. I mean, I was probably doing as good as the normal guy does, who just shows up, earns their paycheck, and I wasn't getting in trouble or anything, but I wasn't doing it with the intentionality that I wanted to do it, or that was in my heart. And I actually had to sit in kind of judgment and say, look, church stuff is great, wonderful, awesome. That type of service is important, but it gets a bite. It gets a piece of my life. And that's the piece that it gets. The fire service is amazing, and I'm so grateful for it. But it gets a piece of me, and it's purposeful. And my family, and in particular, my relationship with Anne, that gets the predominant piece of my life and my attention. And here's why it'll be really important. We end that segment when we do our fire classes. We end that segment with a picture of my coat on the hook in Seattle Fire for the last time. And I took it, literally, guys, I took that picture 10, 15 seconds before I walked out of the firehouse for the last time as an active firefighter. At least I think it's the last time. You never know, but I'm pretty sure. It probably one of the most emotional moments of my life, as you would imagine. I mean, 33 years of being in firehouses and going to fires. I was lucky. I retired as a truck captain, so my career was spent doing the things that I love to do. And that chapter now is over. And boy, those of you that are listening right now know this. It took Seattle Fire all of about 10 seconds to move on from me. One of my friends, it was actually kind of cool. A friend of mine, a guy I've trained a lot with, a dynamite fire officer, he took over the rig that day. And it's next man up. And some folks will miss you. They'll remember some of the things you did. Hopefully you'll be thought of well, at least mostly well. But I promise you, the job is going to move on from you. I was so important to Seattle Fire that on the last day I worked, it was a half day because of the way the hours worked out. I could only do a shift. I was so critical to Seattle Fire Department that on the last day I worked, I was still on the job. I was already kicked out of the department email system, and I couldn't even log on to my own rig. I couldn't log on. The guys had to log me onto my own rig because I was already kicked out of the system. That's how important I was to the overall thing. You know what? Here's the deal. What you're going to want on that day, because that day that you finally hang them up, and every one of you are going to have that day. The biggest tragedy will be that day, that chapter's now written and it was glorious. It was awesome. Imagine the devastation to go home to an empty house, go home to a divided home, go home to, a situation where your kids are going to 5 different places for the holidays and you're dividing up all your stuff. And you know what I mean? I'll tell you candidly, I'm very proud of my fire service career. I really am. I mean, I didn't do everything right, but I gave it my all. I really did. I gave what I had to Seattle Fire and to my fire service career. I am much more proud of the fact that Anne and I, for 36 years, we have been writing a love story together. We've been writing a story that was not easy to write, and challenging times and difficult stuff, and we didn't always see eye to eye, but I am incredibly proud of the story that we're writing together and the story we're going to write together. I wouldn't change it for any other thing in the world. I wouldn't change it for the fire service. I wouldn't change it for my kids. I wouldn't change it for professional accomplishments and those types of things. All those things are awesome emphasis points in the middle of our story, but our story is the most important thing to me.
And Mike, real quick, I know we're going to get ready to wrap up here in a little bit, but looking at what you said, I know we joke that when we retire that our spouse gets twice the husband at half the income. And that's a whole different story. And one of the classes that
hey man, if it's half the income, that's awesome.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
And, one of the things we're doing a 360-degree leadership class, and one of the things that's kind of near and dear to me right now is that transition from warrior to elder, if you will. And you're so used to like having that coat on the hook and doing things. And it's not so much about, you promote to different things, but now it's that new scary chapter. And I couldn't imagine, with some of the things that I'm on the cusp of and looking at, in my own career, without having, like you said, that support at home. That even if they can't, and my wife was in the fire service, so I had that benefit of that, but also the misperception that she's had that crystal ball again. But nevertheless, if I had to go home to that empty house or that divided home, how much more difficult that would be. So you look at the struggles that you might have with things, or even the other people on the job that you're trying to assist or give some sage, not so much advice to, but just share some information with them. But if you weren't able to maintain those relationships, in your personal life, and have those people that were there to support you, even though when you've been a raging ass, that still show you some grace and some forgiveness and say, you know what, you're not a bad person overall, but there's times that you are challenging, and they call you out on it, which is good. So that is such a fortunate thing, and again, just so glad for the work that you all have done to to show that the everyday firefighter, the everyday fire officer, that it is something that you can address. It is something that you can manage, and not from that sterile management perspective, but it's something that you're not alone in. And I think that you made that point exceptionally well. That people don't have to feel isolated with it. So with that, I'll kind of shut up for a minute, because once I get on my soapbox, I get too lazy to stop. So with that, Ben, I'll kick it back over to you.
All right. What we're like Trevor said, we're just about at an hour, so let's go ahead and start wrapping it up, and some final thoughts. And just in relation to what Mike and Anna just mentioned about at the end of their career, I had something similar just happen 6 months and a day into my new career, which, by the way, LT, I'm halfway through my first year of probation. So
awesome, man.
Yeah.
Keep it going.
But I worked in the public high school for 14 years, and had some things happen. The birth of our daughter, and that schedule didn't really fit our family well. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, I'd come home and we're right on the cusp of like her being angry and going to bed, and it was just rough for us. And decided to make the transition and become a career fireman. And I resigned from my position that I had for 14 years before I had another job. So on my last day, when I'm walking out of school, everybody's asking, "Hey, what are you doing? Where are you going?" I'm like, I don't really know. And the decision that we made, that Rachel and I made together, was that I can't go back there because it's affecting our family life. And it's not going to work for us. So I was going to find a job somewhere doing something. And I was fortunate enough to be in the process for a couple of departments, and actually was offered the position in Ocean City, which I am just excited and love my new place and my new career. And it's worked out extremely well. So, it's not just at the end of, your career at one place. It could be a midlife change, that, you have to have that someone else, that's in your life that you rely on. And, you get to have those conversations, and, hey, I got your back. We're going to make this work no matter what. So, without her, I'd probably still be miserable at school, instead of loving what I do every fourth day. So, just a little bit, about our story. Bobby, let's kick it on down to you and get your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you so much, Mike and Ann, for coming on. It's been a great conversation. I'm definitely going to read that book, and I usually make fun of my wife, mostly because she doesn't watch this show. But I want to do some call outs for her. Through my fire service career, she has always supported me in my decisions. At one point, I was trying to get hired in Baltimore City and things like that, which didn't work out. But I had to have that conversation with her. And she says, whatever's going to make you happy, you do. And I was 35 years old. I had 10 years in a retirement at one place. I said, I'm going to go work in Ocean City. And I did the math and said, well, that means I'll be able to retire at 60, which I got to tell you, when you're 35, what you think the 50s are is not even remotely close to what the 50s are. But I wouldn't trade this career in for anything. But Mike and Ann, you really hit on the nail on the head that I can't imagine what it would be like to do the job that I do and go home to an empty house. My decompression is my dog. When I was younger, I always thought dog was a chore, like taking a dog for a walk. But you know what? Every time I come home, she wants to go out for a walk, and that gives me my 10 minutes of that decompression time you're talking about, where we don't have very long conversations, and I can kind of decompress a little bit. So I really got to give my wife a big shout out, because she has been very, very supportive of me through this whole thing. And knowing the risks that we take, she's been behind me. So you hear the dog in the background now.
Daddy, it's time for a walk.
He heard you say it.
So, yeah. So thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been awesome listening to you. I'm definitely going to read this book. It sounds like it'd be great information for me too. And thank you guys for seeing you guys again. And, my thoughts and prayers are still with Baltimore City and Mike. You guys all stay safe out there, and cheers.
Well, yeah, man, thanks for having us. I hope so I know it's a short amount of time. We could go on and on for 5, 6, 10 hours, but I hope it at least kind of scratched the surface. I'll show you the book. It's Challenges of the Firefighter Marriage. We talked about First Family First. We worked really hard on this cover. It's purposeful. What you see in the middle of the cover of the book is you see Ann and I as 20-year-old kids. We didn't have a pot to piss in, man. We had no money. We had no backing, no nothing. It's just two kids who wanted to be together and wanted to do life together. What you see there is two young kids on their knees before God, committing our lives to each other, and to have each other and to look out for each other and let the wind blow. And then what you see all around it are pictures of the fire service, the things the fire service have brought in to try to disrupt and split that apart. And I just want to give you encouragement that you can do it, and you can have them both, and you can enjoy your career, and you can enjoy each other. And if you are interested in a copy of the book, you can get them from Amazon. You can get them from Fire Engineering Books. Or if you would like a personalized copy, just shoot us an email or shoot us a text or get me on Facebook. And you can get a hold of me through the guys here. They'll have our contact info, and we'd be happy to personalize it to you. Or, some guys now, it's kind of cool. Company officers, instead of just going and buy a round of drinks, they're buying books for their crew to make sure that they have it, or to buy them for the firehouse. We just sent a case of books to Green Bay Fire Department. The fire chief there is making sure that every new recruit that comes in gets a copy of the book. So we won't be saying this thing we're saying of, God, I wish I would have known this 20 years ago. You learn it on the front end, what to look out for, and it can really save a lot of problems. So honored to be with you guys. Thanks very much. And hope we get to come hang out at your firehouse someday and talk marriage and fire and everything else.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Mike and Ann, thank you so much for sharing your story and all your work and efforts with us. That's huge for us. And you're absolutely right. I think there's more emphasis now on relationships, PTSD, mental health, all the things that we are really lacking for so long. And we still have a long way to go, but the efforts that you all have made are great. Ben, you got the young family, and you got a lot of sage stuff here, and are going to be able to contribute not only to yourself, but those people who are underneath your charge as you go through your career. I know you had to say what you said because your lieutenant's in the box below you, but at the same time, we have a great network. Bobby, don't ever doubt your negotiating skills. Remember, you are married to a prosecutor, so if you survive this long, you're doing well. But and the last thing I have for you, Mike, I don't know if it's you or Ann who is the guitar aficionado. Are we going to hear like a little Stairway to Heaven before you leave, or is that for another show?
No, but this one, the black one back here, that is signed by 3 members of Led Zeppelin.
That's awesome.
Yeah, John Bonham is not on there because, I don't know, you probably got to be a lieutenant at Ocean City with a prosecutor for a wife to afford that. That's a different level. So, yeah.
Well, Mike and Anne Gagliano, thank you so much again for
You're
sharing
welcome.
your story with us. And again, please check out their book. I know Ben, are you going to be able to pop their information up at the end?
Yeah. I'm gonna pop it up. We're gonna.
All right,
I'm
Ben.
gonna share. Hang on, so I'm gonna share my screen here.
All right, brother. Take us home.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Really an honor. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Honored to
Thank
be
you,
here.
Be
guys.
safe.
So just a couple real quick things. Amazon. This is the listing for the book, Challenges of the Firefighter Marriage. If you guys are interested, shoot us an email, send us a comment on Facebook, anything like that, and we'd be happy to get you guys hooked up with Mike and Anne if you'd like a personalized copy. I think I might mail mine out and see if I can get an autograph in it. So there's that on, like I said, on Amazon. Also, in the pre-show, they were talking about one of the conferences they have coming up, the International Conference for Women in Fire. That's going to be in Orlando in September. So if you guys are in the Florida area or looking for a trip to see Mike and Ann, that's an option down there. And FDIC, we've had Chief Halton come on a while ago now. Trevor's had the opportunity to go out and speak. Fortunately, didn't make the cut this year, but that's not going to stop us from trying again. So FDIC 2022 is going to be April 25 to 30. So if you guys are able to get signed up and registered for that, it's a great opportunity. Lots of networking, lots of great hands-on training. So go check that out. And then the last thing, yesterday when I was at work, I was working with Eric Olson, who is the Ocean City Peer Support Team leader. And he's going to be doing something. This is specific to the Salisbury, Wacomico, Worcester area of the Eastern Shore. So if you guys, if somebody's having an issue, they're struggling with something, he's starting this group to get together and work on recovery and resiliency and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that as well, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help hook you guys up with that too. Eric is one of the things that we've talked about with this is Eric's dedication to recovery and resiliency and the peer support and the health and wellness of the Ocean City Fire Department is phenomenal. So again, if you guys are interested in any of that, please let us know. Be happy to help us out or help you out and get up with Eric. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, great show. Thank you guys very much. Cheers and have a good night. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. God bless.
Thank you.
Bless you guys.